On tonight's summary of the Israel-Hamas War, day 185. Conflicting reports throughout the day about where the hostage deal stands. The United States, Qatar, and Egypt all express mild optimism. Israel and Hamas in turn express pessimism. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu states that alongside the hostage negotiations, a date has been set for the IDF's invasion of Rafah. Responding to U.S. pressure, Israel allows a record number of humanitarian aid trucks to enter the Gaza Strip, breaking the record that was set yesterday. Limor Sonhar-Melech, member of Israeli government, states that interdepartmental work is being done in order to prepare for the re-establishment of settlements in the Gaza Strip. The UN Security Council met today to begin debating the request to admit the State of Palestine as a full UN member. The vote is due to take place later this month. Hello everyone, I'm Alon Burstein, visiting assistant professor in the Department of Political Science and Israel Institute Fellow at the University of California, Irvine, here bringing you the summary of the last 24 hours of the Israel-Hamas War. It is currently the evening of April 8th, 2024 in the United States, the morning of April 9th, 2024 in the Middle East. Starting with the hostage situation, more details were published today about the compromise proposal the United States has been pushing in the Cairo negotiations. The compromise relates to the amount of Palestinian prisoners and the formula of how many quote-unquote heavy Palestinian prisoners will be released in exchange for each Israeli hostage. According to reports, it was designed to reduce the amount of such heavy prisoners that Hamas demanded that will be released, in exchange for Israel guaranteeing more flexibility with regards to the return of Palestinian civilians to the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. Combining different reports, and I stress that this is unconfirmed and some of the reports also contradict each other, there has been a lot of information that was published regarding what the U.S. proposal included and what has been actually finalized and proposed to the Hamas movement. According to the different reports, the U.S. proposal includes that in the first phase, 40 live Israeli hostages will be released in exchange for the release of 900 Palestinian prisoners, including 100 quote-unquote heavy prisoners, that is, prisoners that are sentenced for life imprisonment, usually the leaders of different terror organizations or those who have been found guilty of murder. Another sticking point has been whether or not Palestinian civilians will be allowed to return to the northern parts of the Gaza Strip and how many will be allowed to return to the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. And in this, Al Arabi al-Jadid and Al Jazeera gave somewhat conflicting reports about what the compromise included. Al Jazeera reported that unarmed Palestinians would be allowed to return to the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, i.e. that the compromise says that there's no limit on how many can return as long as they're unarmed. In turn, Al Arabi al-Jadid reported that the amount of Gazan civilians who will be permitted to return to the northern parts of the Gaza Strip would be 6,000 Palestinians per day, up from the initial Israeli proposal of 2,000 per day. Either way, in both reports it stated that Israel demands that they go through the Netzarim corridor and IDF checkpoints. This is something that Hamas has refused. However, other reports suggested that the IDF, that in this compromise, the IDF would agree to position itself 500 meters away from the roads and only have lookout posts on who is going through. And according to reports, this would be done in the Salahuddin Road and the El Rashid Road. In addition to all this, there's also conflicting reports about if the compromise includes a second phase of the deal. Some reports said that yes, the compromise also includes a second phase and leading towards a complete ceasefire, whereas others said that the compromise explicitly avoids talking about the second phase. Right now, I cannot determine whether that compromise did or did not include anything beyond the first phase of the deal. Where things stand right now, it was reported today that the sides are awaiting the answer of Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas in the Gaza Strip, to the proposal. Reportedly that is going to come within 2 or 3 days. At the same time, according to all reports in Israel, the majority of the war cabinet members in Israel favored accepting the U.S. compromise. However, Prime Minister Netanyahu objected, and he ordered the Israeli delegation to reject the compromise. With that, and between all these reports, it has not been explicitly stated what is the proposal that was given to Hamas, whether this is the U.S. compromise that Israel already objected to, however maybe they will accept it later on, or a more limited Israeli proposal, and it is possible that it's also a mixture of these two proposals. Again, it has not been reported. All I'm giving is what has been reported by the different news sites, and some of these contradict each other. Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant echoed today the statements that were made by the IDF Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi yesterday, stating that the Israeli security establishment is capable of preparing and withstanding the price that will have to be paid for a hostage deal. The fighting can resume later. That is one of the ways that it seems Israel's Defense Minister, who is also a member of the War Cabinet, is implying that he would be in favor of this hostage deal. Meanwhile, despite the mild optimism that the United States, Qatar, and Egypt all seem to be expressing with regards to the possibility of a hostage deal, both sides to the deal, Israel and Hamas, are stating more pessimistic statements. Hamas sources were quoted throughout the day in the Israeli Haaretz news site, stating that despite negotiators' efforts, there's no real progress that has been made, and Ali Barakeh, who's a member of Hamas's political bureau, stated to Reuters that the movement rejects the ceasefire proposal that Israel gave. Later in the evening, Hamas put out an official statement stating that despite Israel's position remaining stubborn, Hamas appreciates the negotiators' efforts, adding that the movement is studying the proposal and will inform negotiators of its response when it is complete. Meanwhile, in Israel, sources are also cautioning against optimism, stating that it will become clearer if there is room for optimism in the coming days. Right now, reportedly, everyone is awaiting Hamas's response. With Hamas's response, we will learn possibly what Israel actually proposed, what is Hamas responding to, and whether or not there is progress towards a hostage deal or not. Again, we are expected to hear about that within the next 2 to 3 days. Moving on to the Gaza Strip, there was one rocket that was fired from the Gaza Strip towards Israel, targeting the areas of Re'im around the Gaza Strip. The Al-Quds brigades of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad claimed responsibility for this attack. Regarding the fighting in the Gaza Strip, I remind everyone that the IDF pulled most of its fighting units out of the Gaza Strip yesterday. The only IDF units that remain in the Gaza Strip are holding the Netzarim corridor in the central parts of the Strip, and thus the only reports regarding the actual violence within the Gaza Strip relate to airstrikes. With this, in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, there was one bombing that was reported in Gaza City. In the central parts of the Gaza Strip, an airstrike reportedly targeted Hamas's Interior Ministry building near the entrance to Al-Maghazi refugee camp. 3 people were reportedly killed, including Hatem El-Gamri, the mayor of Al-Maghazi. In the southern parts of the Gaza Strip in Han Yunis, the IDF reported carrying out airstrikes against rocket launchers that Hamas had positioned in the humanitarian zones of Han Yunis. The military emphasized that it ensured that all civilians were evacuated from this humanitarian area before carrying out the attack. Other news related to the Gaza Strip. The IDF released a video today of the interrogation of Tarek Salmi Uda Abu Shaluf. He is one of the spokespeople for the Palestinian Islamic Jihad and was arrested in Al-Shifa hospital last week. In the parts of the interrogation that were released, Abu Shaluf discusses the media strategy of the organization, including the ways in which he was contacted after the Palestinian Islamic Jihad rocket exploded in Al-Ahli hospital on October 16th, and a lot of media outlets then echoed the fact that this was an Israeli bombing. Later was confirmed that it was a failed launching of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Abu Shaluf also confirms that the hospitals are being used as staging grounds within the Gaza Strip, citing 24-hour electricity and internet access as things that are essential for the spokespeople and one of the reasons why they are set up in the different hospitals. Other news, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu published a 21-second video today in which he stated that Israel is always working towards its goals, which include releasing all hostages and complete victory over Hamas. He added, I quote, "Complete victory requires entering Rafah and eliminating the terror battalions there." He also stated, "It will happen. There is a date set for it," which is one of his ways of offsetting a lot of the criticism that has been leveled at him with regards to the IDF of pullout from Han Yunis. He's now stated that there is a date that is planned for the invasion of Rafah. Within the U.S., however, it appears that there was a lot of surprise at Netanyahu's statements. State Department spokesman Matthew Miller stated within several hours of Netanyahu's statements that the U.S. has not been informed of any such date for a Rafah invasion, and the National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby stated earlier in the day that he hopes that the meeting between the Israeli delegation and the U.S. that is planned to discuss the Rafah plans will take place next week. So it seems that while Netanyahu is saying that there is a date that is planned for the invasion, in the United States they're not only explicitly stating there is no such date, however the United States is also stating that they are looking forward to continuing talks about even if a Rafah invasion is needed that will commence possibly next week. Other news, the Saudi Asharak news network reported today that CIA Director William Barnes has proposed a temporary truce in the Gaza Strip during Eid al-Fitr, which commences in the coming days and will continue for the rest of the week. This was reported in the Arabic Jadid yesterday as well. It was not stated, however, if this is part of the negotiations that are continuing with regards to the hostage deal, nor was it stated if Israel is being offered anything in return to a proposed truce. Again, right now, that is being echoed yesterday and today by different Arab news sites. There's no official response regarding if this was proposed, and if so, what does it include, how many days will it last, and if Israel will get anything in return. Other news, Palestinians returned to Han Yunis after the IDF supplies evacuation, and pictures began to emerge showing utter devastation in the city. Some are quoted in different media outlets stating that it looks like an earthquake hit the city and the streets are not recognizable. Different media outlets also reminded that in different satellite images that were taken prior to the IDF invasion that was just over 3 months ago, it was shown already that some 45% of the buildings in the city have been damaged, and some reports are suggesting that some 90% of the structures within the city of Han Yunis have either been damaged or completely destroyed. Regarding casualties, no IDF soldiers were reported killed or injured in the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours, leaving the total number of IDF soldiers that have been killed in the Gaza Strip since the invasion began on 260, and the number of IDF soldiers injured in the Gaza Strip since the invasion began on 1,559. The Palestinian Health Ministry is reporting that 38 Palestinians were killed in the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours in different IDF bombings, bringing the total number of Palestinians that were killed in the Gaza Strip since the war began to 33,207. 75,993 Palestinians were reported injured in the Gaza Strip since the war began. Moving on to the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip, a spokesperson for the U.S. State Department, Matthew Miller, confirmed the reports that I mentioned yesterday, stating that the Israeli War Cabinet has agreed to open the port of Ashdod as an entry point for humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip, and to open a land crossing into the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, i.e. Erez Crossing. In addition, he added that Israel has approved truck convoys that will go from Jordan directly through Israel into the Gaza Strip, rather than the previous route that required them to pass through Egypt first. Other humanitarian news. Israel rejected requests by both Turkey and Qatar to participate in air paradropping missions into the Gaza Strip. Turkey published vast condemnations of this rejection, and the foreign minister, Hakkı Fidan, stated that the aid that Turkey has sent via Egypt weighs over 42,000 tons and was destined for the Gaza Strip by both sea and air. He also warned that Turkey's response is going to come. Likely this is a response that will involve a lot of diplomatic activity. It was also reported that Turkey may be organizing another flotilla that will try to quote-unquote break the siege into the Gaza Strip. In addition to this, another daily record of humanitarian aid trucks entering the Gaza Strip was broken today. The IDF reported that 419 humanitarian aid trucks carrying food, water, shelters, and medical supplies entered the Gaza Strip. In addition, aid paradropping missions also continued. These included today 2 planes from Jordan and 1 plane respectively from the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, the United States, Germany, and Holland. Moving on to the West Bank, there was a Palestinian shooting attack that occurred from the Jilabon village towards Kibbutz Meirav. This is a repeated tactic that has increased since the war began, and it is noteworthy since Kibbutz Meirav is in the Gilboa region, and it is not a settlement, nor is it within the West Bank. It is within the Israeli side of the Green Line and is adjacent to the West Bank border. Different rounds of fire have occurred from the nearby villages towards the kibbutz since the war began. Reportedly, the IDF is now operating within that kibbutz to try to find from where the fire occurred. In addition to this, there was a Palestinian attempted attack that occurred today. A Palestinian woman arrived at the Taysir checkpoint and tried to stab IDF soldiers on the scene. Reportedly, the attacker was shot and killed. No soldiers were injured. Regarding IDF activity, substantial IDF activity was reported in the areas of the El Muer village. In addition, there was also activity that was reported in the areas of Anata, El Arub, and Dora in Hebron, as well as Tulkarem. The IDF reported arresting 11 Palestinians in the last 24 hours. The Palestinian Prisoner Society, in turn, reported that 23 Palestinians were arrested. I remind everyone that the discrepancy between the sides often relates to the fact that the Palestinian Prisoner Society includes East Jerusalem, what it considers the West Bank, whereas the IDF does not. It is also sometimes the difference between arrests versus detainees, or simply both sides reporting different numbers. Moving on to the northern parts of Israel and Syria and Lebanon, there were continuous rockets that were fired from Hezbollah and Lebanon, targeting the northern parts of Israel today. Rockets targeted the areas of the western Galilee, including the areas of Hanita, Ya'ara, and Adamit. Other barrages were also launched towards the areas of Kiryat Shmona and the surrounding areas, including Tel Chai, Beit Hillel, Gushrim, Mayan Baruch, and Kfar Yuval. In addition, a Hezbollah drone was intercepted around the areas of Metula, and drone alerts were also heard throughout the upper Galilee. A Hezbollah drone also reportedly crashed in the areas of Rosh Nikra in the western Galilee. It was not reported this was a suicide drone and it crashed as part of its quote-unquote mission, or if this was a malfunction causing the drone to crash. Regarding IDF activity, there were several rounds of bombings that the IDF carried out in southern Lebanon in the areas of El Adaisa. Reportedly, these targeted the Hezbollah structure where operatives were identified, military structures in the areas, as well as Hezbollah infrastructure. Other attacks also targeted Hezbollah structures in the areas of El Khiyam, and there were also attacks that were reported in Kila village. In addition to this, in a speech that was given in Lebanon, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah stated today that the Israeli attack against the Iranian consulate in Damascus constitutes an attack on Iran itself and an assassination of the top Iranian advisor in the region. I remind everyone that the target of that assassination was the most top-ranking official of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards within the areas of Lebanon and Syria. He stated that the retaliation is destined to come, adding that the presence of these advisors, i.e., of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, is essential to the region, adding that Israel attacking these advisors proves what a threat they are to Israel. In addition to this, after I reported yesterday that a commander in the Radwan force, that is Hezbollah special commando units, was killed in an IDF attack, today the IDF stated that the commander is Ali Ahmed Hussein, who is a high-ranking officer parallel to a division commander in this commando unit. Two of his lower-ranking officers were also reportedly killed alongside him as well in the attacks that occurred yesterday. Hezbollah in turn announced the death of another one of its operatives, different than Ali Ahmed Hussein, bringing the total number of Hezbollah operatives that the group claims have been killed since the war began to 274. Regarding Syria, a rocket was fired towards the Israeli kibbutz Mirav and the areas of Yonatan from the Syrian region. The IDF reportedly retaliated with artillery fire. I will also add that usually later in the night, the IDF carries out retaliations in Syria, so we may find out more about this tomorrow. On a political note, the Iranian consulate was reopened in Damascus today after the attack that occurred last week, in a ceremony that was attended by the Syrian Foreign Minister Faisal al-Maghdad and the Iranian Foreign Minister Hussein Amir Abdullahian. Abdullahian stated in the ceremony that Israel is due to face hard days in the near future, and that the United States is also responsible for the attack against the Iranian consulate, and will also bear the consequences. Thus far, there has not been any reported retaliation, either by Iran or its affiliated militias. According to what was reported yesterday, several different intelligence agencies expect a retaliation either to be launched by Iran itself or by one of its affiliates, still within the month of Ramadan, so that means within the coming week. Remains to be seen how that will play out. Moving on to some of the regional developments, a drone was intercepted off the coast of Eilat and Hevel Eilot. This is in the southern parts of Israel. The drone was intercepted by the IDF Navy using for the first time a system that is called Kippah Yamit that carried out the interception. It was not reported who launched this drone, if it was launched by either Iraqi militias or by the Houthis. In addition to this, the Houthis reportedly launched a nautical ballistic missile targeting a UK-Italian ship in the Gulf of Aden. No injuries were reported. Several hours after this, the U.S. Central Command reported attacking two Houthi nautical missiles that were ready to launch, as well as targeting a drone that was launched towards the Red Sea by the Houthis. It was not reported what the drone was targeting or if it managed to complete its mission. Moving on to some of the political developments for the last 24 hours, the Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid arrived in the United States and met with the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. According to reports of Lapid's office, the two discussed the hostage situation, the Northern Front, the day-after plans, and other strategic matters. Lapid is due to meet a series of different officials within the United States, including the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan. In addition to this, there is continued political strife that was reported in Israel's coalition, with ministers Smotrich and Ben-Gvir publishing condemnations of the IDF withdrawal from the Han Yunis area and objecting to the hostage negotiations. The Israeli expanded cabinet is due to have an unscheduled meeting following Smotrich's demand of Prime Minister Netanyahu. Responding to this latest upheaval, the opposition leader Yair Lapid put out a tweet stating that if a hostage deal is on the table, the opposition will be happy to lend the votes that are necessary, even if Ben-Gvir and Smotrich object within the government. Other political news, Elizabeth Warren, a U.S. Senator from Massachusetts, spoke today in the Islamic Center in Boston. Responding to a question about the International Court of Justice procedures with regards to the case that South Africa brought against Israel regarding genocide, she stated that she believes that as far as the law is concerned, the International Court will find that what has happened in Gaza constitutes genocide, and that there will be enough evidence to support this. It is important to state that in Warren's answer, she did not say that this is her opinion, but rather she emphasized again and again, as far as the law is concerned, implying that she is answering more as a law professor rather than as a politician. However, this is the first U.S. senator that has suggested that Israel may be guilty, at least as far as the law is concerned, of what is considered crimes of genocide. Other news related to the International Court of Justice. The proceedings in the case that Nicaragua has filed against Germany for facilitating acts of genocide due to its support of Israel opened in the ICJ today. Nicaragua is arguing that in giving political, economic, and military support for Israel, and in stopping UNRWA's funding, Germany has violated its obligation to do all possible to avoid genocide according to international treaties. While the court case itself will likely take years, the court is expected to give its response to injunction requests in the coming weeks. Other news, the French President Macron, alongside Egyptian President Assisi and Jordanian King Abdallah, all published a joint op-ed article that was picked up by a string of news sites throughout the Middle East in the last 24 hours. The three leaders call for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip and state that violence, terror, and war cannot bring peace to the Middle East. They call for implementing UN Security Council resolutions both for a ceasefire and for the unconditional release of all hostages, and repeatedly warn against the, quote, dangerous implications of an assault on Rafah, adding, and again I quote, an invasion of Rafah will only bring about more killing and threatens regional escalations. Finally, they call for a two-state solution as the only way to ensure peace and security in the region. And from this, moving on to the future of the Gaza Strip, the UN Security Council began its meetings today in a special session that is meant to debate the request of the Palestinian delegation to be accepted as a full UN member, i.e. that the state of Palestine, rather than being an observer status in the UN, will be a full UN member. The event began with a meeting of the General Assembly debating the war, and then it is moving to a closed meeting of the UN Security Council. During the General Assembly meeting, the Israeli UN ambassador Gilad Erdan displayed a picture from 1941 of the Palestinian leader Haj Amin al-Husseini meeting with Adolf Hitler, stating, and I quote, "The UN, in gross violation of its charter, is considering imposing the establishment of a Palestinian terror state. This will not be a regular state, it will be a Palestine Nazi state." He added that the UN is trying to break the Guinness World Record in the field of rewarding terrorism, and stated that if Adolf Hitler were alive today, he would be singing the praises of the UN. In addition to this, in an interview to Israel's Knesset channel today, member of Knesset Limor Son Har-Melech of the Jewish Power Party, who is also a member of the government, stated that the vision for the day after plan is renewing Jewish settlements in the Gaza Strip. Pushed about the feasibility of this, Son Har-Melech stated that it will happen in phases and that she sees her role in government as ensuring that this is a trajectory that is chosen, adding that it will be an appropriate response to Israel's enemies. When asked about concrete plans and if this is actually being implemented, she stated that more is being done in secret because of the world's expected condemnations, but that substantial interdepartmental government work is already being done in order to make this vision a reality, and that we will see the plans that are being developed come to fruition already in the next session of the Knesset. That means in the coming months. Again, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has repeatedly stated that there will not be a renewal of Israeli settlements in the Gaza Strip. This has also been repeatedly stated and emphasized by Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. In turn, other members of Israel's government, including Minister of Finance, and he's also a minister in Israel's security establishment, Bezalel Smotrich, the Minister of National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir, and Limor Son Har-Melech, and a lot of other government members, have all stated that establishing settlements in the Gaza Strip is part of their vision, and as far as they're concerned, Israel's vision for the day after what will happen within the Gaza Strip. If you find these reports important, please do remember to hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications if you want to know when reports come out. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. That is my report for the last 24 hours. I'll be back tomorrow.